Today we have another build video for you today. And today we have 4 Warlock builds, one for each subclass. First in this video we're going to start off with the Void, but one thing I want to tell you before we really get into this is this video right here was live streamed on Twitch. We filmed it there, so you may see like chat pop up every once in a while. But maybe you should go follow my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/SpycerLive. Just putting that out there. It might be in a pinned comment down below. If it isn't, just tell me I'm lazy or something, and I might get it done. So, back to the video. Starting off with Voidwalker, we have what I featured as top tree Voidwalker in my Voidwalker builds video. And that's going to be massive amounts of Warmind cells. So this is of course using this season's mod from the artifact Warmind's Decree, which allows you to create Warmind cells through void explosions. I will also be using a couple other seasonal mods such as Energy Accelerant to give you explosions that deal double damage, and I will also be using Unstoppable Swordsman, something like that. You know, the Void Melee stops champions thing, that one. And of course, no Warmind build is complete this season without Hammer of the Warmind to stun unstoppable and overload champions with Warmind cells. Now, getting into weapons here, I suggest using Ruinous Effigy. The reason I suggest Ruinous Effigy is because it's fun, and trace rifles do more damage than primaries on average, so it has that edge over Graviton Lances. You could use it against majors and do decent damage with it. Not to say that Graviton Lance doesn't work here, because it definitely is a great option. But sadly, neither one of those options has any mods this season for champions. But with trace rifles getting mods this season, you can run Scavenger and Reserves, and that allows you to run something like Ignition Code in your kinetic slot to blind enemies and give yourself a little bit easier time. But in my heavy slot, I used the future War Cult grenade launcher this season, which is void, and it has chain reaction on it, allowing me to take out a big group of adds with explosions. And those explosions from the deaths of adds deal more damage through Energy Accelerant. And by the way, Energy Accelerant does affect both the Transmutation Sphere on Ruinous Effigy and Graviton Lance explosions. That's just a little tip. And in this video, I was using Hung Jury in my kinetic slot to get anti-barrier, even though I was running standard strikes, just to show that you can do all champions with this build, although I wouldn't suggest relying on Warmind cells to handle champions. It's just too much RNG. But for my exotic armor, I use Nezarexin, and the reason is, if you're using Transmutation Spheres or you're using Graviton Lance and you're using that future War Cult grenade launcher, you're getting a lot of void kills, and with Nezarexin, void kills make your abilities and supercharge faster, and your grenades and your super can spawn Warmind cells. Even your melee can, technically, if you get bloom kills. So this just allows you to grenade spam and super spam, creating a lot of Warmind cells and putting a lot of AoE damage on the playing field. But for my mods, I, of course, as I stated before, use Energy Accelerant, Warmind's Decree, Hammer of the Warmind, and Swordsman Accelerant, whatever it is, the Void Melee Unstoppable Champion. I also used, Ashes to Assets, the one where grenade kills give you more super energy. I used that on Nezarexin just to get that much more super energy. And that's about what I use, really. This is a great build. If I could change it a little bit, this would be reliant on Bungie changing the artifact system to allow us to have all of them. But I would love to have the one where my grenades feed my grenades. That would be amazing with this build. Just endless grenade spam, and occasionally dunking on an enemy with a transmutation sphere. You may want to run a fastball mod on your gloves just to get a little bit more range. Just a little heads up. But overall, this build is focused on Warmind cells and just spamming them. I personally run more ad clear focused Warmind cells, so like Burning Cells, Global Reach. And I run Power of Rasputin just to either kill ads a little bit faster and keep the Warmind cell there, or to kill a major champion or whatever a little bit faster with the like 33% debuff they got. It's really whatever you want to run on your Warmind cells, because everyone does have a different play style, and this build can either make you more support for your team by using Power of Rasputin and protection of the Warmind. There's also the one that was it cellular suppression, I think is what it's called, that suppresses enemies that are affected by the Warmind cell. But Global Reach is of course the go-to, and I highly suggest Hammer of the Warmind to handle, you know, taking out champions. But Warmind's Decree is the one thing you need for this to work, no matter what. So that's going to be the build for Voidwalker today. Next is going to be our Arc build, and this will be on Chaos Reach in PvE. And I'm not using Geomag stabilizers. I know, it's shocking. That was awful. But yeah, Chaos Reach, not using Geomags. I'm actually using Fellwinter's Helm. This build was featured in my Stormcaller video, but basically the melee on the Chaos Reach is a longer range melee, and it does pretty good damage. So, using that fact, you throw it into the weakest enemy in a group, and they all get hit by a suppressing explosion that allows them all to be hit with more damage. It's a great ad clear build on Chaos Reach, a more boss damage focused subclass. And due to Ionic Traces, you'll get your melee back faster and your super. So Geomags are not very missed, just because the sheer amount of ad clear you get a lot of Ionic Traces with this build. I was running Storm Grenades just because I felt like it, instead of Pulse. Of course, you get to spam your super a little bit as Chaos Reach. That's just the way it's made. But things that make this build great, of course, are Fellwinter's Helm, which give you those suppressing explosions. I was using Monte Carlo to ensure that I always had a ball lightning on me. I also used the Future War Cult SMG, which I've heard a lot of people don't like, but I actually really enjoy using it. It has some great rolls on it. The stats are pretty good. I think it's like the recoil or the zoom. Something about that is why people don't like it. And I was using the Eternity's Edge. I'm sorry that I wasn't using Falling Guillotine. I just decided to make my life just a little bit more difficult that day. But Fellwinter's Helm is often slept on, it feels like. It's a great exotic. It may need a little bit of a buff, but really it's about where it should be. It's great for ad clear, and I think that might be the confusing thing, is it's a suppressing exotic. Like, it suppresses things and it gives debuffs to things, but it's for ad clear. It just helps you clear up ads a little bit faster, and it makes Monte Carlo a more usable weapon in general, allowing it to chew through enemies. Now, my Monte Carlo is also underleveled, so the debuff really helped it a lot. But things you need to understand about this build is your other mods aren't quite as important with this build. I would suggest using Elemental Wells with this and running your Future War Cult SMG as long as you have your melee up, or if you have Wellspring on it like I do, I have Wellspring surplus, you could run it all the time and maybe trade your exotic for one you like more. But things I would recommend using with this is, I can't remember the names of them, but the Elemental Well mod that makes Elemental Wells when you get kills with weapons that match your subclass. The one for getting kills, the one for melees, and of course the one for supers. And you should grab the one that makes you do more damage from picking them up, just because that damage buff is nice on your SMG because it's only on weapons that match your element. It's just pretty good to do that. And if you have an arc weapon with Wellspring on it, I would suggest you use maybe a Wardcliff Coil or something like that in your heavy slot just to get that damage buff from Elemental Wells. I'm not the most knowledgeable person in Elemental Wells, but from what I've used so far, I'm getting into them and I can't wait to see where they go. But at the moment, I think it's good for this build and a select few other builds, but in general, just because of how fleshed out they are, Charge with Light and Warmind Cells are, in general, better options. Not to say that Elemental Wells are bad or will always be bad, they just need some help. But with this build, there's also some other things you can do. Of course, I would suggest getting high strength. High intelligence would help too, but strength is a stat you're really looking for at this build, being that you're meleeing a lot, and that's the focus. The class item mods where using your class ability gives you all your ability energy. That helps too. Just anything to try to get your melee back faster will help you a lot. Maybe you can grab Concussive Dampener or another resistance to help you resist enemy damage, since you're going to be in their face meleeing. But overall, I do enjoy this build. It's solid. I didn't go too in-depth with the mods just due to Elemental Wells changing, and this season may not be the best season for this build. We could get some crazy arc mods next season. We had Overload arc grenades, so if you do have that mod in your artifact selected, pulse grenades would probably be an infinitely better option than storm grenades, as pulse grenades last longer and pulse more, give you more options to, or more opportunities to stun a champion. So there's some things you can do with this build, but I'm more putting this out there just to, tell people, let them try it out, and next season keep it in mind. That way, just in case something crazy happens with it, you already know. So yeah, use Felwinter's Helm on Stormcaller. It's a pretty good experience. And next, we're going to be talking about Dawnblade. Now we're going to talk about Dawnblade, and I'm going to use it is just flat out the worst tree on Dawnblade, bottom tree for this. Really, top tree probably is the better option for this. I'm going to be focusing on using the Warmind Cell mod that gives you Warmind Cells for explosions. There's a lot of things you can do here. I was using Hung Jury. Fatebringer is a great option. Prey's Revenge also being another. Just something with Firefly in your kinetic slot. That way you can spawn solar explosions. And in my elemental slot, I was using a Sojourner's Tale with Dragonfly on it. There's some other options you can use. I'm using Xenophage in my heavy slot because it spawns Warmind Cells. You could use a solar grenade launcher or rocket launcher and instead choose to use like Tiku's Revenge in your elemental slot, which could be a great option for you. Tiku's Revenge is probably the best Warmind Cell generating weapon in the game when combined with Wrath? Is it Wrath or it's Wrath of Rasputin? Yeah. I get those two mixed up every once in a while, but that mod and Tiku's together are really great together. It just allows you to spawn mass amounts of Warmind cells just because the bow explodes. Sunshot's a great option too. Don't count it out. Jotun can spawn Warmind cells. It's kind of a pain to do it with, but it does spawn them. For your exotic, there's a little more leeway on this one just because the way that it is. But your mods are way more important. And the reason I did this on bottom tree is because you have so many options and you're not really limited to what you're doing. You can do multiple different playstyles and you can heal yourself, which is great. It's very helpful as a solo player. So maybe you slap on things to help you either survive. So, power of Rasputin, protection of Rasputin, that whole thing. Just to make you tankier and deal more damage. I just remembered the exotic I used was Chromatic Fire, the lamest exotic in the game, a game that I have trashed time and time again. It is a bad exotic, but with weapons that have Firefly on it, it does kind of redeem itself, being that Firefly sometimes isn't enough to take out an enemy from its explosion, but Chromatic Fire usually does help to finish them off. Energy Accelerant makes this way better. It does not buff Chromatic Fire, sadly, but it does buff Firefly, meaning that your explosions will more than likely kill most enemies that it encounters. And if you're using a Dragonfly weapon, maybe throw a Dragonfly spec mod on it just in case. So back to this build. Another reason to use bottom tree is I don't believe top tree can spawn Warmind cells with a super, but you can with bottom tree. I don't think top tree has. It does explode, but I don't know if it's enough of a radius to really give you the opportunity to reliably. But you'll usually get a Warmind cell when you super on bottom tree due to it having that streak of blast damage, and I believe the swords themselves have a larger blast radius, and Phoenix Dive does do a blast when you hit the ground. That may be something to check out with Energy Accelerant, but I don't expect much from it. If you don't want double explosions on your primary or kinetic, maybe you run something else, like Dawn Chorus to make your super a little bit better. But let's focus back on mods a little bit. You have your survival ones, so most of your Void Warmind cell mods. Global Reach is also always a great option. Hammer of the Warmind, always a good pick for Warmind cells this season. There's a few other things. If you want ad clear, you can run Wrath of Rasputin, Burning Cells, Rage of Rasputin, Global Reach, of course, just to have more radius and deal more damage with cells. And I think the Solar Explosion from Warmind cells has a small chance to spawn more Warmind cells. I'm not quite sure if that's true, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was in Worthy. So don't take my word for it, but I think it does. So that's about it for this build. It's really great at spawning Warmind cells if the enemies are grouped up enough. So maybe in Strike like Devil's Lair at the end room, where you have a lot of enemies grouped up. Maybe in Vault of Glass during the pillars, whatever you want to call them, before Templar and before Oracles, that time. It could be great there. There's a few different occasions in the game where it's great. Altar of Sorrow, it's amazing in. Blind Well, it could be great in. Just where you have a lot of ads grouped up, it will take out a lot of ads through Firefly, and then you could kill the rest with Warmind cells. Warmind cells are just great, and centering a build around them is sure to succeed. So, Hung Jury, another point in its favor is, of course, this season it does have anti-barrier. So there's that. You do have all of the champion types if you do use a Hung Jury or Adept Hung Jury with Firefly on it. I feel like I've rambled more in this build than any of the other ones just because this one's a little weird compared to the rest. It's not quite as competitive as the others, but it's just fun to spawn Warmind cells, and this build will get you lots. So yeah, we're going to be moving on the Shadebinder in just 1 second. Our last build of the day, our Shadebinder build, is pretty far off from the current Shadebinder meta. This isn't going to be focusing on Bleak Watcher turns. It's going to be focused on shards. This is a shard harvesting build. That's what you do with it. We're going to be using the new seasonal exotic for Season of Spycer, Kairosusia 77k or whatever it's called. That is a sidearm. It exists. It's an exotic too, but it can freeze enemies, and when you freeze enemies with it, they drop the good old shards, just like your abilities do. And it's more reliable at doing that than Salvation's Grip, just because you're not wasting your heavy slot on Salvation's Grip is the reality of it. Not only that though, sidearms have Unstoppable this season, so you do have an Unstoppable mod in your kinetic slot that you can also generate shards with. I'm also using Claws of Ahamkara to get 2 melees, which is great on Shadebinder. You have a really strong melee, and I'm using Deafening Whisper. It's one of my favorite grenade launchers in the game. It's from Season of the Hunt. It's a Void Waveframe grenade launcher. Your heavy slot's a little more your choice, really. But for your aspects and fragments, run Ionic Traces, or not Ionic Traces, but Ice Flare Bolts. They're Ice Flare Bolts, yeah. Run those because when you freeze an enemy and shatter it, you'll send out more, and you just get to freeze entire groups with one melee. And you have 2 melees and a grenade to freeze people with. Kairosusia will make sure you always have your a melee at least. You'll be seeing Glacial Harvest cooldown quite a bit. I highly recommend using the fragment that makes your explosions deal more damage, just because you're going to be causing a lot of shattering with either throwing a melee at a frozen enemy or from shooting them with Kairosusia. Also, Whisper of Durance is good for Dusk Fields if you want to run that, or run Whisper of Rhyme. Get Overshields. Overshields are great. You could run the one where shards come to you. Basically, focus on shards, but also keep in mind your Ice Flare Bolts can do a lot for you in ad clear. So making sure that your shatters deal more damage is not the top priority with this build, but I would place it pretty high up there. Basically, you're going to kill an enemy with Kairosusia, throw out a melee, grab the shard, and freeze an enemy with Kairosusia, and just keep that train going. You'll always have melee. You may reload a lot with your sidearm, so make sure you have sidearm loader on. And you should be fine. Kairosusia is kind of a lengthy reload. I personally don't have the catalyst. I think that makes it a little bit more bearable, but go get your catalyst. Don't be like me. But yeah, this build is just focused on melees, and you get a lot. I mean, Claws of Ahamkara are great on their own, but Kairosusia making shards is like a dream come true. I think it also works on Behemoth and on the Revenant, I think. Not to the same extent, because it has to kill for those, but I could do some testing on that in the future. That won't be this season. It'd be next season, but I'll see what I can do with those just in case. And yeah, this build is simpler than the rest. Like, the mods aren't too dependent on it. It's just freeze things, pick up shards, keep going. It's simple, it's easy, and it fits pretty well in. So yeah, that's about it for this video. I will possibly be reworking how the series works. I'll have a poll for that later in the week, so you give your opinion on it. And I live streamed this, and I might live stream some other things soon. So go follow my Twitch. Should be a link in the pinned comments or in a community post somewhere, you know. Maybe a little bit of a hunt, but try twitch.tv/Spycer live. If the profile picture is the same as mine, you found me. But yeah, if you can, come chat with me in Twitch. It's pretty fun. And make sure you like, subscribe, comment. You know that whole thing. This video is almost 30 minutes, so I'm going to shut my mouth and get this over with. Yeah, thank you for watching, and see you next time.